Whenever you're ready, you can begin.
The 3 live-action Transformer movies debuted in the U.S. and grossed approximately $535 million in only their first 6 days in the theater, according to The Hollywood Reporter. This is the same concept that was first introduced in 1984, earning $7 million in just toys in its first year. So how could it survive a generation change and technological changes? How can the same concept surpass becoming a fad and instead become a tradition in American and global entertainment? Sticking with the key idea of robotic aliens that were shapeshifters, the creators and masterminds behind Transformers were constantly releasing new facets of the Transformer world and constantly updating their approach to entertaining audiences. Unlike other toys of the 1980s that have lost their popularity, they use an almost unique form of marketing that is key to any franchise's popularity. This same idea can help all of you stay popular through the years. Before any of your main characteristics become old, find a new way to update it or change it in a way so that it may feel new and fresh again. Now, I have a borderline obsession with the live-action films. I've seen them all multiple times. The knowledge of the 2 decades before I found out about Optimus Prime and Bumblebee was due to much research and reading. In fact, I even found 2 books completely devoted to Transformers. This led me to believe that Transformers is a phenomenon in America. So now we will discuss the main elements that built the Transformers phenomenon that included first toys, then comics, and finally cartoons that changed and transformed in order to meet the needs of the target audience and thus allowed for 30 years of success. To begin with, how exactly did the first Autobot and Decepticon begin to take over our country in an entertaining way, kid by kid? It all began with a toy. The first toy came out in 1984 and made a huge splash by earning $70 million, as I mentioned before. Years after, these toys continued to transform to catch the eye and interest of children and bring in large amounts of money. Ironhide, Trailbreaker, and Sunshaker debuted in the U.S. first. Pablo Hidalgo, who is a Transformer and lover and expert, wrote the Transformers Vault, the complete Transformers universe, called these first toys a collection of one-to-one shape-shifting role-playing accessories. The idea for Transformers came from 2 Japanese toy lines, Daikon and Microchange, to make these toys an interactive action figure that children can actually become a part of. Also, like the popular G.I. Joe action figure, there was a story associated. They placed good versus evil, Autobots versus Decepticons. In 1985, competitors began to make their own transforming action figures. Hasbro stayed one step ahead of them by creating a seal of authenticity, which means that these were real Transformers. This also marked the beginning of a massive addition of toys, beginning with Dinobots and Constructicons. In 1987, the largest Transformer, Fortress Maximus, was introduced. In 1993, they came out with a new toy that could shoot water, and when water shot at them, it would change color, signifying water damage. Of course, this is just a small glimpse into the world of Transformers toys. When sales would dip, Hasbro would immediately revamp their toys in one way or another. Moving on, unlike some of the other toys on the market, these Transformer toys were accompanied with something special that appeals to older crowds of kids. Comics. The comic strip that followed was released soon after the toys. The Marvel Comics and a creative team headed by Bob Budiansky created a complex storyline that would mirror the popular toy collection. The comics were successful and popular and lasted for 80 issues, even though it was originally only supposed to last for 4, as stated in the book Comic Shops. Nowadays, the comic is under new publishing, IDW, which means that in 200 years, it won't be as expensive as the Marvel comics, but they're still out there. And the thing that made them so amazing was that Transformers had a complex personality and memorable attributes. It means that you fell in love with one of the Transformer characters, like Bumblebee. It became a huge hit. Also, they brought in human beings, which weren't in the toy line, like Buster Witwicky. We know him as Sam Witwicky. So that the audience could relate and imagine themselves actually interacting with the Transformers in these stories where the Transformers save the world. To also increase their notoriety and popularity, they made their way into other comic strips. In the third one, Spider-Man made an appearance in Transformers. And then when sales were starting to dip in 1993, they came out with the G.I. Joe series, where G.I. Joe and Transformers helped to save the world. So just as the comic series further deepened the fans' love and interest for Transformers, the animated cartoon that began in 1984 was a staple for all Transformer fans through the years. For almost 24 years, the Transformer cartoon series captured the attention of fans even as the technology of television changed. It would only make sense the show would transform too. In 1984, it was a Saturday morning staple. Then it moved to a weekday spot in which it aired 5 days a week. This meant much more airtime and more time for Transformers to come into your household. Oh, the one problem was that whenever a new toy came out, they would place the new toy in the show immediately. So now the toys were coming out every 6 months, there was new toys, so that was like 10 new Autobots and Decepticons they were adding to the show. It became really confusing. After 4 complete seasons and massive growth of the toy line, it was too hard to keep a cohesive storyline. So before the show lost its popularity, they decided to take a break to regroup. According to the Transformers timeline compiled by Brad Bear, the animated series returned to networks when a line of throwback Transformer toys were released in 1993. This meant that they only had the first 21 Autobots and Decepticons, so it was a lot easier for children to understand instead of like all of a sudden there was a new one. And the Generation 2 featured all new CGI graphics that were stimulating and up to date for viewers. After this, Transformer Beast Wars came out in 1996. This used computer-generated animated cartoon. And it was a huge hit because it was a lot more believable looking. That's that one down there. And it was robotic animals. There was animals changing to Transformers. And still, children believed in it completely. And it was a huge hit until 2001. Afterwards, the Armada series, the Negatron series, and the Cybertron series all came out. And this is where Transformers creators found their niche on how to keep things alive. Before the Armada series fell short and lost its popularity, their Negatron series would come out, and so on and so forth. Still, there are more shows coming out today. The 3 sections of the Transformer franchise have built an empire that is entertaining for many viewers and have paved the way for the directors of Transformers to have such a successful hit in the new millennium. To sum it up, the ironic part of Transformers was that it was the ability of the creators and masterminds to transform or change the story just the right amount to make the concept always intriguing. The real success of the Transformers empire comes from the almost 3 decades dedicated to the toys, comics, and cartoons that were always changing to be fascinating, while still keeping true to the main concept of shape-shifting robotic aliens. So what does the future hold for the Transformers and our favorite Autobots? What can we expect from Bumblebee and Optimus Prime? Will they still come save our world? Will they still be looking for the spark plug? I have faith that they do, and so should you, because the creators have more tricks and twists up their sleeve. And as the makers have always said about Transformers, there's more than meets the eye.